streaming too. It's not just the authentication side. Now I need to determine also like you got a weird login over here. Why did it look like this? Oh, that was my 12-year-old son logging in and he somehow got a passkey. And so it's really like started me thinking on the side of how do we protect people on those type of activities and things like that. It's probably less the hacker coming in because I don't really care if you steal my virtual coins in Zelda or anything like that, or my rupees. But it's making sure that the people in my life are secure while using those different devices. And I think that there's a lot of great techniques that are in place and that will continue to grow as those as different platforms become more popular.
Hi, Alex, and welcome to our security bill section. So, before we proceed, I would like you to introduce yourself to our readers and viewers who are watching this video. So,
My name's Alex Patterson. I'm a developer relations engineer at Fusionoff. I'm also a developer advocate as a whole, kind of in the web space too. So I spend a lot of my time creating my own podcast actually and running courses all surrounding web development too.
oh, nice, nice. So, let's begin with our session today. So, my first question to you, with your extensive experience in software development, what are some of the common vulnerabilities that developers should be aware of when building a web application, particularly in the world of authenticity?
Yeah, so a lot of challenges that kind of come from building web applications is around UX typically a lot of the time. So you're always kind of balancing the ability for people to get into your application easily and use it, but the challenge with that is there's so many security implications that come with that. So when you sometimes implement a login form, if we go, I'll say back in the day, but people are still doing this. If you just put a form on your site and have just a user login with a username and a password, and it's all passed to like a backend server in clear text, people have not traditionally, but incorrectly stored those passwords in clear text in their database. And it was as simple as taking a SQL statement to say, okay, when you type this in again, is it correct? And it's like, yeah, that looks good. But as the web has progressed and as mobile has become larger in our lives, which everyone uses mobile at some point, when you're logging into these systems, hackers started to appear, or at that time, it didn't even take much to hack these different systems. And so we needed more and more security put into place to surround these. So we started to get better with this. But if you use most apps today, they're still asking for your email or username and a password. They're no longer usually storing that in clear text in the back end. So you're kind of doing a hash on that, or encrypting it in some way so that a normal user can't get to it or see it. But the challenge now is things with GDPR and other systems that are in place that they really want those users to be completely removed from an application when asked too. So there's kind of the customer identity side of that's in your system too. So you probably have seen more popularity flow into things like a Google sign-in or Facebook sign-in. So those social sign-ins, those systems that have a massive amount of engineers surrounding them, they're implementing that side of the security. So they're authenticating your user. And then when it comes back into your system, you're just kind of using it. So we're starting to cross a different evolution. There's an even cooler technology, which I'm sure we'll get to, but coming out soon.
Okay. So, what strategy do you recommend for a developer to enhance the security for their application, especially when dealing with the sensitive user data?
Yeah, so I definitely, from a login perspective, in 2024, I think you're going to see a lot of people move towards passkeys or a passwordless flow in their logins. So for that, The biggest key there is it's going to reduce a lot of complexity from a user standpoint. At first, it's going to be difficult because they're used to, user logins coming into the system, and that's traditionally what they've used. So it's going to take a little time. But now we have Amazon and Google are both passkey first, so they're not prompting for a username password anymore. Other ways that you've probably seen this and that are still solid ways of using it are something like magic links. So when you put in like I want to access a site, I put in, Alex at fusionauth.io and it sends me a link and I can click that link so that it's unique to myself and it secures the fact I have access to my email. So that was kind of like another MFA way to do that. But passkeys are kind of the next evolution of this, where we're taking a step towards biometrics as well. So you're not even going to associate any keys or any passwords like with characters or anything like that. It's going to randomly generate these things. And then your biometrics to that machine are going to secure that on top of it. So you'll need kind of a thumbprint or fingerprint or facial recognition to say, yeah, that's me, and go ahead and secure this relationship between the two devices. So that's kind of the future that I see making applications more secure.
Okay. In your opinion, how can developers strike a balance between delivering innovative features and maintaining the stringent security measures in their application, basically?
Yeah, I think the challenge has always been how can I quickly get people into my applications, right? So I think with this sort of setup, you're not going to have a lot of drop-offs like you used to have in the past. So you're not going to have that, oh, I forgot to log in, I can't get in, and like all of your users kind of drop out. So the difficulty there when you talk about the developer standpoint or the developer experience side of that is you don't want to keep writing all of these security backends. So that's why you see popular systems like Okta or Auth0 that are probably number one in the space. And then Fusion Auth is similar to that. So Fusion Auth, what it allows you to do is you could get started as simply as using username and password, but then you could switch everything over very simply to just use passkey and you don't have to maintain that system. So you don't have to worry about a security vulnerability that shows up, or I need to upgrade my database and there's passwords in there. So like all of that kind of security based concepts, you start to worry less and less about as a developer. And you just know, hey, if I call it to this system, it's going to be secured in the correct way that I need it. And they're going to have all of my user identities too. So it kind of takes care of two of those parts that you don't have to worry about. And I think that's the evolution that we've seen over time is we went all the way from, like I call it mom and pop websites, but play websites essentially that are storing clear text passwords. And now you're kind of so much more advanced at this point that it doesn't really make sense to roll your own security or your central identity and access management system. You let experts kind of take care of that. And the DX on those, like Fusion Auth, for instance, when the APIs are just it's API first and it's so simple, developers are used to that. So they can call out to those systems super easily and the DX becomes really cool.
Okay, so open source software play a crucial role in the development process, especially in the development community. So, how do you balance the benefit of open source collaboration with the potential security risk associated with it, relying on the third party dependency, basically?
Yeah. Yeah, and there's two kind of sides to open source, right? So when you talk about like a system like Fusion Auth, the core of what we create is not open sourced, but everything that surrounds it is. So like we are huge, and I am a huge proponent of open source, being able to create applications and making those easy to use and like inviting others in to check that out. I have always been of the opinion, and you can kind of see this in like the Linux kernel and things like that. Huge open source projects, the more eyes you have on those projects, you're actually getting rid of a lot of security vulnerabilities, right? So um, the challenging piece to that are having all the correct roadblocks or blocking concepts in place. So like when someone puts a PR in, it needs to be properly checked to make sure that you're not opening holes in your system, right? So like someone introduces something that I can easily socially hack, someone really needs to be checking that, and having more eyes on those systems is crucial. And that's part of like the challenge when we talk about Fusion. The core of the reason the core isn't just open to everyone and we invite anyone in, we need some reliability and someone behind those systems too. So like when security vulnerability is found, we can actually update it, patch it, and our full engineering team is in the way of that kind of going through and opening up to the rest of the world, basically. So the open source side with SDKs and things like that, it's still a fantastic way to get a use out of these products. But kind of the concern there is always going to be we can't just let anyone update the core of it and the crucial parts of that system.
Okay. So apart from the open source software, there is IoT also that is on rise. Now these IoT systems are on rise, and
Mm.
the things as they are interconnected. So what unique challenges in terms of cybersecurity do you foresee in the near future, and how should developer prepare to tackle those challenges basically?
Yeah, I'm not as familiar on the IoT side of things. I've done a few projects on them, and I can definitely say the security is not as robust, and people aren't as aware of it. So we've probably seen a lot of things like Ring doorbell get hacked, and probably Google Nest and things like that. And it becomes pretty concerning when you start putting cameras inside of your house on those side of things. So I've done like a project for a large grilling manufacturer on IoT, and some of the machine to machine security pieces that are in play, they're a little different, right, than you would necessarily get for like a website where we're using like passkey on a website that makes sense. You have a fingerprint that you're able to use. On the IoT side of things, you actually need to do some different ways of encoding or encrypting that traffic between the two and establishing the right authorization so that people can get into those. So I'm not as familiar on that side of the house, but I definitely know it's a problem that we are constantly working on resolving. And actually, Fusion Auth has a way to do systems to system authentication as well.
Okay. So, if I ask you your opinion, how can developer community collaborate more effectively to address these challenges collectively? Are there any initiative or resources that you can recommend to the developer looking to expand their knowledge in this area?
Yeah, I think it's important to know things like just information as a whole, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's important to understand like what is cores, what's some other examples? Just the technological terms that we use every day, like OIDC and what do these actually mean to us? And even this conversation, like, okay, this passkey thing's coming up. Well, what is a passkey? Like, don't just tell me here, you implement this because it's great. Have a conversation about it. And there's certain instances, maybe it doesn't make sense for the application that's like on an internal firewall that makes, in-house operations more difficult and like overall maintainability harder. Have those conversations, go to a meetup, go talk about the app you're writing and how the authentication and the security of the application flows all the way down to the database. Like there's great examples between AppWrite and Supabase that incorporate a lot that I'm actually a Firebase GDE as well, and knowing that my Google authentication side of the house also plays a big role on the Firestore side of the house to secure my database, like knowing those different applications to authentication is going to be really important as we continue to see, hackers coming in and trying to always like break down these different security firewalls that are in place.
Okay, so you are also a member of Google Developer Program, Expert Program, basically. So you must have a unique perspective on the emerging technologies and the industry trends. So, depending on that, what advancement in the cybersecurity tool or technique do you find particularly promising for the developer looking to strengthen their defense against the cyber threats?
Yeah, I would say that another popular one is actually something. So Firebase has a unique term that's called app check, which uses reCAPTCHA. If the audience is familiar with that, you've probably all gotten the pop up and it says click the 7 squares that are a staircase or a motorcycle or something like that. So the cool part about these type of applications, so Firebase AppCheck in particular, what it's doing is threat detection before any of your other rules. So when it comes in and it says, I've seen this login before, it's been out here 12 different times out of this IP address, and suddenly it shows up out of China or Singapore or wherever, and you're like, how did they fly there in the last 6 hours? That doesn't make sense. And it actually picks up on that and forces the application itself to say, you know what, this user probably isn't legit. Let's either check it further to block it, or just not authenticate it at all. So there's some advanced threat detection. Actually, FusionAuth has some amazing advanced threat detection in place. So those are great ways to stop at like the front door, right? We're not even going to let this in before it authenticates, and then you can't even get to the database rules and things like that because you've checked it so far upstream to not allow the misuse of the application.
Okay, so this is on the hacker perspective side question. In your experience, what are some of the common tactics used by the hacker to exploit vulnerability in the software system? Can you just help me out with what are the just common tactics of to hacker?
Yeah, I still feel like in 2024, social hacking is by far the riskiest and probably the most advanced way to hack into systems.
Okay.
And I think some of the newer technologies, so when we talk about like passkey, those advanced technologies are going to help deal with those too. So like when my mom gets a call and just they're like, your bank information leaked, what's your social security number, what's your password, passkeys aren't going to allow her to give that stuff out, well, at least not easily. Like you won't be able to share it directly. And so I think preventing those type of situations where like the systems and the technology are actually helping prove who you are instead of just kind of manipulating a way into the system, it's going to be easier to prevent going forward.
Okay, so as threat, like hacking techniques are nowadays growing. Like they are using different technologies and steps to hack a system or a software. So, what do you think? How far threat intelligence play a crucial role for developer to defend against the attack?
Sorry, I might have misunderstood. What technologies are there? Is that what you're asking?
So basically, my question is like hacking techniques are like they are using different hacking techniques nowadays. So what role threat intelligence play in helping developer to anticipate and defend against the cyber attacks?
Yeah, so like I said, with the kind of the advanced threat detection side to it, when you have like malicious behavior for those logins coming into the process, I think it's really important that your kind of your authentication system is going to be able to pick up on that. So like things like rate limiting or failures on specific email. So like if you are still using password based and you see this email coming in and it's just continuously hitting, or it's hit like 7 times in the past 1 minute, issues like that have been in place will continue to be in place for rate limiting certain things. I think we talked a little bit about CAPTCHA, which FusionAuth uses as well. Location awareness is also going to be a big key in that. And then there's always the common like access control lists and things like that that you can start to get into too. But another thing that we haven't talked about is somewhat is when you start to look at like domain blocking too. If someone we've seen this kind of pop up where you think you're getting like a Google pop-up screen or something like that, and it looks legitimate, but in reality it's not, and it's one letter off on a domain name or something like that. A lot of the systems, including FusionAuth, will do domain blocking specifically. So if someone tried to be like a man in the middle situation and you're popping that up so you can capture a password or something, will prevent that too. So those are some of the different ways that I think as cybersecurity becomes more and more important, at least on the authentication side, those are going to be huge.
Okay, so I don't know whether I should ask this question, but I just ask you are free to not to answer it. So as you were the founder of Coding Cat Dev, you create a lot of tutorials that help individual to learn web development. So how do you incorporate cybersecurity best practices into your teaching material to ensure
Yeah.
the developer prioritize security from their outset?
Yeah, so for me, it's important, mostly for bubbling up the information so that others can choose, what they're going to use and how they're going to use it. So, for instance, when I'm teaching a Firebase class, I want to talk all about the different ways to log in and the different options that are out there. But I also, not that this is necessary, but like I want to teach Firebase app check so that people can understand you can block a lot of those resources coming into it. So I'll introduce just that snippet or I'll do a podcast on it. And like I've taught it at a meetup locally nearby so that other developers can start to understand that. So that's probably one instance. The other instance is just in generalities, like talking about how to correctly secure front end versus back end, right? So like you don't want API keys for new developers that aren't used to it. You don't want an API key in your front end. Like that's bad news. And here's why. And then on your back end, here's how to handle it. Don't put it in your logs, put it into environment variables that don't get logged out and things like that. And that's probably even a outdated way of doing it too. But anyways, so those type of teaching best practices, how to handle different security aspects, are probably key. Conversations like this are always key on my podcast as well as on this podcast. So I think just getting the information into the hands of developers, especially junior developers or people just coming out of college that are the future and kind of the next step towards development, it's important that the things that you've learned, at least for myself, for the past 20 years, we take for granted at this point because we do it every day. Someone new coming into it could make a mistake quite easily still today because they're not using just standard based protocols. And that's why I like to teach and talk about on the podcast too.
So this is on a lighter note. I've read somewhere that you enjoy playing video games in your spare time. So I just want to know, are there any video games or gamified cybersecurity training platforms that you find particularly useful for entertaining or honing your cybersecurity skills?
It's funny. I've probably never considered it a thought while I'm playing a game. But starting to work at FusionAuth, I suddenly realized, how important it is in the gaming industry. And it also brought up to me that there's not just, Google login. There's, you need Twitch login, you need I think there's
Yeah.
a Unity login or something like that. So like for me, my favorite game is of all time is Zelda Breath of the Wild. Like it's just endless and you can hang out in it, but there's multiple aspects that I kind of look at in gaming too. It's not just the authentication side. Now I need to determine also like you got a weird login over here. Why did it look like this? Oh, that was my 12-year-old son logging in and he somehow got a passkey. And so it's really like started me thinking on the side of how do we protect people on those type of activities and things like that. It's probably less the hacker coming in because I don't really care if you steal my virtual coins in Zelda or anything like that, or my rupees. Um, but it's making sure that the people in my life are secure while using those different devices. And I think that there's a lot of great techniques that are in place and that will continue to grow as those as different platforms become more popular. We actually just met the founder of actually I think he's the founder of Fat Shark, which has created different games, and just hearing his discussion how he was using Fusion Auth and how they're able to go from different platforms, so like a operating system or a PC we used to call it, go from that side of it into like an Xbox and then into a Switch. And as they kind of go through those different ones, what challenges have they run into and how easy is it? And with FusionAuth, it's great because we handle all of those different situations. I'm sure there's other, companies out there that do the same thing. But hearing those stories of, how gaming has it's very pervasive in our society at this point, and it's kind of amazing to me that even like a Candy Crush, you don't really think about like how secure do we need to get into it. It needs to be very secure because there's millions of people using that, and it's kind of incredible at this point. I will preface, or I should have prefaced all of that with, I'm not a huge gamer, by the way, but I do love a couple of them.
But yeah, right now, these days, even a small kid use their even phones or tablets. They will
Yeah.
not play games, but there are a lot of security concerns also. You click on one button, or you just click on a picture, and then system got hacked or your mobile got hacked. So there are huge security concerns with the gaming, especially. So yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, this was my last question to you. If you want to add anything else for our viewers to know, or you want to share something that I left out, so please free to say.
Yeah, I would just say, check out Fusion Auth if you have questions. We have a great forum that you can get any answers from. We also have a Slack community that you can check out. But it's truly one of those situations that it's it, the way that Fusion Auth is created is for customer authentication and authorization. And so like you can scale that thing out to as many apps as you want, and you can combine them into a single tenancy or multi-tenancy. So it's really great to get started and be able to grow from there. So it's a great solution.
Thank you, Alex, for being here.